This is how to read Jin Ping Mei Chapter 21, Embroidery Version. Wu Yunyang sweeps the snow and cooks tea, and Ying Earl invites Wang for the flowers. Chapter version. Wu Yunyang sweeps the snow and cooks tea. Ying Earl invites the flowers for flowers. 1. Youth Tour. This episode fully demonstrates the amazing writing style of the author of Jin Ping Mei. This talented and romantic man who was born in the Ming Dynasty perfectly interprets the mastery of human feelings is the article. The splendid conception and splendid words tell the twists and turns in the life story, each right and wrong scene by scene like a big play. The good and bad days, the joys and sorrows, are all expressed in the wonderful pen and leisurely. As a reader, every time I finish reading this chapter, I can't help but admire it from the bottom of my heart. There are such good words in the world, and there is such a Jin Ping Mei in the world. Who dares to write an essay? The excitement of this episode begins with Zhou Banyan's youth travel. The sword is like water. Wu Yan beats the snow, and his delicate hands break new oranges. The brocades are beginning to warm up, and the smoke from the beasts is constantly rising. They sit opposite each other and tune the sheng. I asked in a low voice who I was going to spend the night with. It was already 3 o'clock in the city. The horses are slippery and the frost is thick, so it is better to stay away until they can walk alone. Later generations made up a quite romantic story for slim hands breaking new oranges. It is said that when the author Zhou Banyan was prostituted by Li Shishi, he met the emperor in person and hid under the bed before he could do it. Unexpectedly, the emperor also brought an orange. Li Shishi cut the orange with a water-like knife and shared it with the emperor. Zhou Banyan wrote about this in his lyrics when he had nothing to do. Later, Master Li dared to sing it to the emperor. When the emperor heard that it was Zhou Banyan's work, he became angry and demoted Zhou Banyan to the countryside in anger. Obviously, no matter from the plot or the details, this is basically nonsense, but it is just a legend that ordinary people are happy to say. Of course, the key is that Zhou Banyan writes well. A few actions and a few love words make love extremely beautiful and clear, extremely pure and graceful. And it is even included in the introductory book 300 Songji poems for children. However, we must not be deceived by the romance of literature. This is not a lover's love, but a prostitute. The horse is slippery. It is better to stop, leave the money and spend the night in a brothel. Jin Ping Mei reinterprets this poem in a realistic style. At the end of the last chapter, Simon King's Meng Haoran walked through the snow to look for plum blossoms in response to the Earl's divine words failed, and made a big fuss. He vowed not to set foot on his door again, so he mounted his horse and went home in the heavy snow. It was the first watch of the weather at home, although it was not as good as the third watch in Shi. It was still frosty no matter what. At first glance, it seems that the story of whoring in the poem has come to an end with the beating of the boys and Simon King's hand. However, this is not necessarily the case. When Simon King returned home, he suddenly discovered that Wu Yunyang was burning incense at night. So the first highlight was burning incense on a moonlit night. 2. Burning incense on a moonlit night. It is said that Simon King returned home from the courtyard. The weather had already been updated. When he arrived at the front door of his house, the boy called to open the door. He arrived at the front of the yamen at the back. Only the yamen was ajar, and there was no sound in the courtyard. Simon King felt in his heart. He thought to himself, there must be something fishy about this. So she hid in front of the pink wall inside the yamen and listened quietly. Xiao Yu came out and put a table under the corridor. It turned out that Wu Yunyang had been fasting 3 times a month since Simon King turned against him, and she would pray and burn incense every 7th day to bless her. The husband came back to his heart early. After a while, Yunyang came out after getting dressed, filled the courtyard with incense sticks, looked into the sky and bowed deeply. She said blessing. The husband is nostalgic for fireworks and is childless in middle age. Concubine and the other 6 wives and concubines have nothing to do. I pray that my son-in-law will come back to his heart soon. I don't care about the concubine and the other 6 people. And I will see an heir soon, thinking that it will be a lifelong plan. Very noble, isn't it? Last time I said that Wu Yunyang needs to find a way to retreat to advance. Is this it? I think so. Wu Yunyang knew that she was not as sexy as Pan Jinlian, not as wealthy as Li Ping'er, and had insufficient abilities, so she could only talk politics. In fact, when Wu Yunyang mentioned Hua Die last time, she also showed that she was only thinking about Simon King, at least to protect the wealth she had deposited, but unfortunately it was all ruined by Pan Jinlian. This time she had to use her mind to find out what was more valuable to Simon King, the most important problem in his life, childlessness. Only starting from here can there be hope for reconciliation. Therefore, I came to the conclusion of this drama starring Wu Yunyang, supporting role of Simon King, Xiao Yu, Dian, Lang Shang, Pan Jinlian, Meng Yulu and others. Wu Yunyang's burning of night incense must be a drama designed to be limited to couples. Reconciliation drama? The reasons are as follows. First of all, Wu Yunyang burned night incense at just the right time. Thinking about daily life, whether Simon King goes out or Wu Yunyang goes out, there is always a servant who reports the return of the master first and is ready to welcome him. Therefore, it can be basically concluded that this time was deliberately chosen and may have been planned multiple times. Secondly, the ceremonial gate is ajar. It's a winter night, and no one else is round. So why isn't the ceremonial gate closed? Obviously, there is a reason to raise suspicion. If the ceremony door is closed, you must knock loudly. If the ceremony door is open, you must drive straight in. Thirdly, based on human common sense, if Wu Yunyang always burns incense and worships Buddha, Simon King will not be surprised and will naturally go straight to the door without thinking. The previous article never mentioned the relationship between Wu Yunyang and the nuns. Only the last chapter mentioned Wang Wangxiang. The gift of sesame oil and white rice to the sister-in-law may have been a good strategy in exchange for these gifts to burn incense on a moonlit night. And this success made Wu Yunyang have a good impression of the nuns, and she began to listen to the sutras and follow the Buddha. Of course, she also got the benefits described later, more rewards. So Simon King may feel that something is strange. Fourth, Simon King was just eavesdropping on the prayer through the door. It was one courtyard away, so it was difficult to hear even late at night. Obviously, the voice of this prayer was not small. At least it was made deliberately to be heard, so the somewhat nondescript phrase, "hiding from my son-in-law in the congratulations in the book of poems and poems," is missing from the book of portraits. Finally, judging from the content of the prayer, although Wu Yunyang prayed to heaven sincerely, Simon King did not change at all, and even returned to the arms of a prostitute not long after, and Wu Yunyang did not pray again at night after that. Obviously, the purpose of her prayer was simply to find a powerful step for reconciliation between husband and wife. To sum up, burning incense on a moonlit night must be a careful planning. Therefore, Zhang Zhubo kept reprimanding Wu Yunyang for being fake, which meant that Wu Yunyang burned incense for reconciliation instead of sincerely praying for Simon King to have an heir. But Wen Long had a legal battle with Zhang Zhubo. As for asking for a son, even if it is a lie, it is still generous. Only when you have such a heart can you do this. If you do this, you will have the heart to kill him, and there will be no one to blame. At that time, I must have regarded the flute played by the golden lotus and the horse chopper made by the bottle as true and true. Sigh, it's wrong, a big mistake. Regarding the above two opinions, my opinion is, Wu Yunyang's burning of incense itself is a scene for reconciliation. But the part of seeking a child is also very beneficial to herself. For example, if Brother Guan does not die, he will still have Wu Yunyang as his mother when he grows up. As for his biological mother Li Ping'er, she can only be the aunt referred to the role of Aunt Zhao in A Dream of Red Mansions. So no matter what, having a son it's all a win-win outcome. It must be said that Wu Yunyang is indeed at a much higher level than others at this point. She had already predicted Simon King's unspeakable secret, and what he said to his son-in-law Chen Jingji last time was, "If you have a son, you have to rely on your son, but if you don't have a son, you have to rely on your son-in-law. If I don't come out for a long time, this share of the property will belong to you and your wife." It is conceivable that this thought lingered in his mind for a long time. In fact, Wu Yunyang was concerned about this matter earlier than him. Wasn't she? Otherwise, Why would she come for Chen Jingji and recommend Chen Jingji? The clue we left behind in the previous article is here. Wu Yunyang made two preparations early on. One was to ask for a son, and the other was to win over Chen Jingji. The question now is, have other women noticed Wu Yunyang's thoughts? The answer lies in the second major drama of this chapter, Reunion at a Good Time. 3. Reunion at a Good Time. The result of burning incense on a moonlit night was that Wu Yunyang won a great victory. Simon King apologized softly, and Wu Yunyang couldn't help but sneer inwardly. She first brought up the most critical topic. Am I an unvirtuous whore? Simon King bowed deeply, of course. The author couldn't help but insert a short description of Wu Yunyang's makeup to make fun of it. How can Simon King not love? Critics of the portrait also ridiculed Simon King. Virtue cannot be overcome sexy. And then said, Simon King, was ignorant for a moment, did not listen to your kind words, and let down your good intentions. Only later will you realize that you are a gentleman, so please forgive me. Okay, this clears me of the charge of being an adulterer. Wu Yunyang continued to provoke. I am not the person you love. Any opportunity that doesn't give you a chance. Do you have any good advice? Simon King couldn't answer, so he had to find another way, complaining. What is ridiculous is that the content of this man who is accustomed to holding a horsewhip, when he apologizes to his wife as, he was a cuckold in a brothel, no matter whether Wu Yunyang is virtuous or not. I think she must have mixed feelings in her heart. But she still calmly accepted the step of giving good advice. In order to regain his wife's favor, Simon King continued to shamelessly pretend to be a dwarf and kneel down. Although it was a bit unnecessary, Simon King was indeed a bit cute at this time. What follows is self-evident. A rare sexual text about Wu Yunyang appears in the book. In the words of Zhang Ailing, one of the most outstanding students of Jin Ping Mei, the road to a woman's heart is the vagina. Simon King naturally. He is an expert. Simon King and Wu Yunyang were both happy with this result. But Meng Yulu and Pan Jinlian were unhappy. Meng Yulu ran to tell Pan Jinlian early in the morning. Readers are naturally curious. How did Meng Yulu know about what happened in Wu Yunyang's room? The news must have come from Lan Xiang from the kitchen. This news is divided into two parts. First, Dian and other boys told about what happened in the brothel. So he only knew that he saw some flaws in the prostitute. And then when he came back, he saw the moonlit night burning incense. I must have heard something and then. Reconciliation. The other part came from Xiao Yu and Yuxiao after burning incense on a moonlit night. Girl Zhu said, the two talked all night. As for what was said, it is definitely not clear, so there is an assumption behind it. Through Meng Yilu's processing, these two aspects of information were specifically told to Pan Jinlian completely. And he came to the conclusion, if it were someone else, he would somehow be lying. This means that Wu Yunyang usually treats us as a concubine. She often talks about Lang, but she does enough herself. Pan Jinlian's reaction was, didn't she say she was not at peace? We tried to persuade her for a long time, but she still couldn't make peace with her. Why are they now reconciled? So, Meng Yilu expressed her true feelings. She wanted to make peace, but she couldn't save her face. If the wives and concubines had any quarrel in the future, others would say that when you had a quarrel. We were the ones who made peace. Chapter 51. Wu Yunyang's own past events. To reiterate, I thought that when I get married, the traitor and I will not meet each other inside or outside the door. How will we get here? Presumably in Wu Yunyang's heart, she won this hardship with the most perfect womanly virtues of the battle. Obviously, the purpose of Meng Yilu's trip is clear. On the one hand, he tells Pan Jinlian the facts and the truth. And on the other hand, don't tell them to buy a good boy and provoke Pan Jinlian's dissatisfaction and let her assassinate Wu Yunyang. Her goal was successfully achieved. All the concubines held a banquet together, and Pan Jinlian asked Simon King to apologize, and Wu Yunyang to forgive him while talking and laughing, thus bringing the reconciliation of the couple to a successful conclusion. In the eyes of outsiders, this did not mean that she was taking advantage of Wu Yunyang's pleasure to rob her. Is it the result of burning incense on a moonlit night? But having said that, there are still scripts that Meng Yilu could not think of. And Pan Jinlian still has an even more unique trick. The finishing touch of this play, Southern Pomegranate Flowers, Good Day Reunion. The content of this song contained in Kwaming Sang is, "We will meet again on a good day, and we have agreed to meet tonight. The people are quiet. The moon is high. Don't knock on the outer window to express your feelings. Gently swing the flower tips and see the shadow of the screen window shaking. That's when the talented man of faith thrives. There's no need for butterflies to use bees as matchmakers. They can already make friends with phoenixes and phoenixes. Without detailed analysis, this song is almost tailor-made for burning incense on a moonlit night." Pan Jinlian was amazing enough that she immediately thought of this piece of music. And what was even more amazing was that she knew that only Simon King could understand it. He soon clarified the fact in Meng Yulu's room, so she wanted to use this kind of music. The code that only Simon King can communicate publicly humiliates Wu Yunyang. It really feels like being defeated by her. In A Dream of Red Mansions, Bo Daikai and the others all know opera, and they often mock each other by ordering and listening to operas. And even more interesting, of course, the most powerful thing is the author himself. The title of this poem beats 1,000 words. We can't tell whether Wu Yunyang and Meng Yulu really didn't understand this piece of music. But Wu Yunyang's sweeping snow and making tea seemed very natural and happy. But I like to wait for my son to taste the tea, and to sweep the fresh snow to cook it in time. This is the most elegant thing she has ever done in her life. This is a harmonious and romantic moment. In the bright room of the back hall, a brocade tent is set up to surround the screen. The plum blossom curtain is put down. The fire is set with charcoal, and the banquet is laid out. Domestic music, pipa, zither, xianzi and yukan are played and sang at the same time. Yes, this is it, the realistic version of beauty. Slender hands, and the brocade is warming up. The beasts are smoking, and they sit opposite each other and play the sheng. Simon King was full of resentment and dissatisfaction with the bitch without justice. He returned home in the snow despite the hoarse slippery frost, but found the romance that only existed in a brothel in his own home. Perhaps he should feel very happy and satisfied. That's it. However, what was interesting was that the snow cleared and Simon King returned to the brothel early the next morning. The third major drama of this episode, Inviting Wine for Flowers, was staged. 4. Invite Wine for Flowers. The so-called replacement of flowers is naturally Sisterly Gui. The so-called invitation of wine is naturally Simon King. So the protagonist of this scene is undoubtedly Earl Ying. We have already analyzed the relationship between the brothel and the gangsters in the previous article. Simon King supports Sisterly Gui with 20 taels of silver a month, so naturally he does not want others to get involved. This is a business rule and a normal thing. 20 taels is a lot of money, and you can buy several maids. However, it may not be enough for the big expenses in a brothel, because on the one hand, the brothel has to feed all kinds of people, including jar, and on the other hand support these helpers to attract prostitutes for them. Therefore, when Simon King broke up and left the brothel in anger, the 20 taels of silver were probably gone. At this time, the Li family, relying on Sun Zizui, Zhu Xinian and others, might not be able to save the defeat. So they had to spend a lot of money to ask Earl Ying to intervene. Next, let's take a look at how Earl Ying used a few words, 3 tricks and 2 tricks to bring a coffin. Decided fact back to life, of course. It's fair to mention that none of Earl Ying's empty tricks escaped Pan Jinlian's eyes. Do you feel like you are defeated by her again? The first step, let Li Ming pioneer explore the path. Li Ming is the younger brother of Li Jiar and the uncle of Sisterly Gui. He is the music teacher of the Ximen families from major music companies Chunmai, Yuxiao, Yingchun, and Langshang. It is common for him to go to and from Ximen's family, especially for banquets. So Earl Ying asked Li Ming to perform. Let's first explore Simon King's tone on the grounds that the musicians did not sing in time. After all, Earl Ying has not seen Simon King again since he came home. I wonder what his tone is like if he was so angry. Earl Ying would rather help Sisterly Gui find a new prostitute than offend Simon King for this. Step 2. Earl Ying takes action personally. First of all, he said that Sisterly Gui was wrong. He had already accused her, and she had admitted her mistake and wanted to apologize in person. Secondly, to smooth things over for Simon King, who sees things as truth. That is to say, to raise the value of Ding Erguan, and to find Chen Shenzheng an official of the third rank. Inexplicably but indifferently, Simon King dwarfed him in his heart. Once again, you are trying to catch a thief and a cheater, and since you saw the two of them drinking together, then admit to drinking and never admit to having sex. There is absolutely no involvement. Of course, these were still not convincing enough, so Earl Ying had to use his last resort. We are sworn brothers. Since we are brothers, we can't go too far, so Earl Ying begged for nothing. When Zida all knelt down to plead, Simon King had no choice but to give him some face. Step 3. Make jokes in front of Sister Li Gui and act according to the prevailing situation. Now that we have arrived at the brothel, everything is solved, and all that is left is the basic skills of being a helper. They joked openly, patted each other secretly, joked openly, and flattered secretly. They went back and forth to make Simon King happy, and the matter passed smoothly. Compare this to Simon King and his wife, who were in conflict for several months because of one or two misunderstandings. However, Simon King and a prostitute, who were obviously cuckolds with their own eyes, reconciled in less than 2 days. As the saying goes, if color does not attract people, it is not necessarily color that hinders it. The author's satire on the sophistication of human nature here is extremely poignant. Simon King spent the whole day drinking in a brothel, and when it got dark, he returned home to celebrate Meng Yulu's birthday. So, this time the finale of the snowy day was about to take place. Perhaps this scene could be named Family Reunion. 5. Family Reunion. As early as the 10th episode, when the wives and concubines were enjoying the Furong Pavilion, Hua Erniang, who had not yet appeared next door, sent news of the flowers. By this time, Li Pinger finally appeared clearly at Simon's house. At Meng Yulu's birthday banquet, all the wives and concubines played dice, drank, and made orders. They were all having fun and peacefully. However, just behind this peaceful scene, we see the largest use of the romance of the West Chamber in the entire book, Jin Ping Mei. Every sentence of the romance of the West Chamber secretly reveals their heaviest future. Wu Yunyang, the sixth lady, was drunk with concubine Yang and dropped the 8-beaded ring. You see her grab the tea frame. After the tree fell and the hosen dispersed, Wu Yunyang watched the final fall of the Simon family like a gossamer. Simon King, the poppy, saw the conflict between Chu and Han, and injured the main horse army. She only heard the golden drums in her ears. The wives and concubines kept quarreling, but in the end, she couldn't bear it. The poppy saw the conflict between Chu and Han, but she couldn't do anything. Just a passing guest. Li Jiar, the water fairy, because two people entered the peach garden, was frightened and dispersed. The flowers bloomed and the branches were full of butterflies, and all they could do was fall red and rouge all over the ground. The flowers bloomed and withered, the butterflies gathered and dispersed, but Li Jiar finally returning to her old career. Rouge Julang, if Wu Yunyang's longevity is a good reward, why not Li Jiar? Pan Jinlian, old Bao, when he is old, he goes into the flowers. He breaks the 3 cardinal principles and the 5 constant principles. Ask him if he is a traitor and becomes a thief. For her, happiness is self-sufficiency. Li Pinger took good care of herself, took the stairs to look at the moon, and waited until the day and night stopped at the spring equinox. At that time, the wall threatened to turn into Wangfu Mountain. The fragments of secret appointments and emotional husband-in-law across the wall were vivid in her mind. But in an instant, the spring breeze suddenly stopped during the most prosperous season of the Simon family. He died and became Wangfu Mountain. Sun Zui said, "Ma Lang, I saw a group of crows fighting against a phoenix and tripping up a broken-footed goose. So you can teach me the difficulty of being a human being." Sun Zui never dared to take seriously whether to follow a master and be someone else's slave, or to follow a slave and be his own master. She thought about it, but once she finally decided, destiny made it difficult for her to fly. Meng Yulu Imus Nugio, drunkenly holding the 4 reds, dragging the brocade skirt. How many spring breezes and moons sell the gold tent? This is Mengyulu spring breeze and night moon, and it is also a rare spring breeze night moon for her, and she will still be able to do it after all. How many? This may be a proud conclusion. No one cares, and no one should care about these sarcastic and ominous words. However, the author of Dream of Red Mansions noticed it. Look at his lantern riddle making Jia Zheng's sad prophecies, because they cannot know it and cannot control it. Only for a moment did they forget their lifelong jealousy and quarrels, and indulge themselves in it with great joy. This was a family portrait of family reunion. Everyone drank and sang together affectionately, as if this was the true nature of the world, and we were even in this gorgeous scene. In the excitement, I forgot about the countless intrigues behind them, and the long smoke that could break out at any time. However, even the superficial singing and dancing is almost fleeting. Perhaps, because of this, these prosperous moments and intoxicating joy are more worthy of our common cherishment and common memory. We try our best to remember every bit of beauty in life, just to live up to the endless flow of time. 6. Research. The Romance of the West Chamber. In any system of Jin Ping Mei, there are at least 20 chapters of text that mention the Romance of the West Chamber dozens of times, either as sweat towels or when singing songs, and the list goes on and on. Over the years, academic circles have conducted in-depth research on this, such as whether the West Chamber in the Jin Ping Mei is the Southern West Chamber or the Northern West Chamber. My knowledge of the Romance of the West Chamber is limited, and I can only study some basic questions, such as, in the eyes of the author of The Plum and the Golden Vase, what kind of book is the Romance of the West Chamber? Some scholars have compiled and analyzed in detail all the fragments of Jin Ping Mei that refer to the Romance of the West Chamber. We don't need to spend more time on this. My personal conclusion is, the Romance of the West Chamber is a pornographic book, in the eyes of the author. No matter how many sexual descriptions there are in Jin Ping Mei, the Romance of the West Chamber is a pornographic book because it nakedly depicts the love story between Zhang Sheng and Cui Yingying. Most of the references to Zhang Sheng or Yingying in Jin Ping Mei contain sexual metaphors, and they even expand the scope of sexual immorality on their own, such as I have no chance to meet Yingying, so I go to the matchmaker to satisfy my greed. Even when the Romance of the West Chamber is mentioned in the drinking orders at banquets, most of them are meant to be pornographic jokes. Therefore, no matter how elegant classical literature the Romance of the West Chamber looks to modern readers, in the eyes of the author of The Plum and the Golden Lotus, or in the eyes of the characters in The Plum and the Golden Lotus, the Romance of the West Chamber is full of obscene and evil connotations. Even every character and every noun in the West Chamber symbolizes evil. In addition, we also compare the Romance of the West Chamber in A Dream of Red Mansions. In the eyes of the author of A Dream of Red Mansions, what kind of book is the Romance of the West Chamber? The answer is still obscene books, because Jia Baoyu was bored in the Grand View Garden. His subordinates found him some obscene books that were not suitable for children, such as The Secret History of Wu Zixin and Fiying Gaiden, was brought into the Grand View Garden, including the Romance of the West Chamber. In other words, the Romance of the West Chamber originally existed in parallel with these obscene books, but its writing style was more elegant. As for Dream of Red Mansions, the Romance of the West Chamber and The Peony Pavilion are obscene books outside the Grand View Garden. However, Dream of Red Mansions quoted Lin Daiyu's words, "People in the world only know how to watch plays, but they may not be able to appreciate the meaning of it." Interesting. That is to say, obscene books such as the Romance of the West Chamber have their own unique interest. In other words, Dream of Red Mansions took a fancy to the good writing, good realm, and elegance in the vulgarity of their obscene books, while The Plum and the Golden Vase took a fancy to the forbidden fruit in the elegant lyrics of the Romance of the West Chamber, preferring elegance to vulgarity. A Dream of Red Mansions has elegance, Jin Ping Mei has elegance, and the dividing point between A Dream of Red Mansions and Jin Ping Mei between elegance and vulgarity is in the Romance of the West Chamber. 7. Research Chapter. Structural Issues. Chapter 21 can be called one of the best chapters of Jin Ping Mei, not only because of the infinite charm of the 4 major scenes, but also because of its unique role in the structure of the whole book. Let us do a brief analysis below. 1. According to the 3-part structure of 206020 more precisely, it should be 21-58-21. Chapter 21 inherits the first and second parts, and the wives and concubines are reunited for the first time. If you read Jin Ping Mei from different angles, you can read many structural methods. The 3-section structure of 206020 is the most obvious one and the most recognized and accepted by the public. From an overall perspective, if the Ximen family has experienced a religious-style process of growing up and living in bad emptiness in the world of Jin Ping Mei, the first 20 chapters describe the growth. Pan Jinlian, Meng Yulu, Chan Mai, Li Ping arrives one after another, 6 wives and concubines, and 4 families are gradually formed. The 60 chapters in the middle describe living. Ximen king's rise from prosperity to death. Ximen's family from being powerful to being scattered. And the last 20 chapters, taking Meng Yulu's departure from home as the boundary, it can be divided into defeated and empty. At this time, the Ximen family has become increasingly depressed until there is no successor. Time passes quickly in the first and last 20 chapters of the book. Choose the important one. The scenes mostly take place outside Ximen's house, while the middle 60 chapters are novels within novels, detailing everything. Come on, most of the scenes take place in Ximen's house. Obviously, excluding the background and ending, the middle 60 chapters are the essence of the novel. The 21st chapter is the general outline of the 60 chapters in the middle. This is the first time that 6 wives and concubines, and 4 families have a family drink. By the 61st chapter, Li Ping'er was sick and feasted on the Double Ninth Festival. This is the last collective appearance. If this time the wives and concubines were more or less in harmony with each other, by that time they were almost irreconcilable. In addition, Chapter 21 forms a complete loop with chapters 79 and 80. The first family reunion in the 21st chapter is the beginning of the gathering. The 79 chapter Ximen King dies, and the 80 chapter Li Jiar leaves home. The Ximen family begins to fall apart, which is the beginning of the separation, and the gathering and separation become Jin Ping Mei one of the most important motifs, certainly the most important in Dream of Red Mansions. In addition, the sum of these 2 chapters is exactly 100. In the seemingly fragmented structural background of Jin Ping Mei, 100 has a special meaning, such as 100 chapters, 100 big beads, 100 aphrodisiacs, etc. Even many chapters in the book have a structure with hundreds of chapters as a whole, such as the first and 100th chapters beginning and end. The 50th and 51st chapters, the middle part continues, the 21st chapter, with chapters 80 Gathering and Dispersion, chapters 30 and 70 Tokyo Clues, chapters 18 and 80 to Chen Pan's affair, etc. They have formed artistic features rich in charm. 2. The Favor Map 3.0 was officially formed. When reading Jin Ping Mei for the first time, it is very easy to leave this impression. Li Ping'er is full of honor and favor. Pan Jinlian competes for favor like a cock-fighting cock. Wu Yunyang is a good gentleman who doesn't care. And Meng Yulu is tactful, seeking good fortune and avoiding misfortune. However, this is not the case at all. We have previously analyzed the battle for favor territory in the 1.0 and 2.0 series. The last time Li Ping arrived, the battle for favor territory 3.0 was officially launched. This is the longest, most important, and most complex layout structure in the book. With this as the focus, let's take a look at the situation of the wives and concubines of the Ximen family. Let's take a look at the old gang first. Sun Zui, Li Jiar and Li Guiji. Sun Zui was completely suppressed by Chan Mai in the kitchen battle, and has been drifting on the edge of the territory ever since. Li Jiar originally had no competitive capital, but sister Li Gui increased her weight. However, last time Ximen King found out that she had cheated, so he smashed up the brothel in a rage, and the relationship between the two gradually drifted away. Obviously, Li Jiao's power also dimmed. In other words, The original gang of old men has almost lost power and has withdrawn from the core stage of the Ximen family's fight for favor. Now there are only 4 people left in the center of the territory: Wu Yunyang, Meng Yulu, Pan Jinlian, and Li Ping'er. For a long time, the territory of the 3.0 series is dominated by the 4 of them, and the game and competition between them occupy the core part of the story. The conflict between Pan Jinlian and Li Ping'er is natural. Pan Jinlian lacks everything, so she hopes to possess Ximen King through sex. Li Ping'er lacks nothing but Ximen King sex. Therefore, they're the number 1 and number 2 heroines, recognized as whores, and the competition between them has always been fierce. And what about Wu Yunyang and Meng Yulu? They should be counted as the number 1 supporting actress and the number 2 supporting actress. Chapters 20 and 21 are the first war between the territories. The core event is the Cold War between Wu Yunyang and Ximen King due to Li Ping'er's marriage issue. The Cold War was over, and Wu Yunyang recovered the lost ground. But she also understood a truth from then on: the opponent was too powerful, and since Pan Jinlian liked it and was willing to come forward, she could just wait quietly for her to take action. From then on, she began to habitually be silent and create an image of herself as a good person who has nothing to do with the world. As for Meng Yulu, what did she learn from this Cold War? Compared with Pan Jinlian and Li Ping'er, the oldest Meng Yulu was in a moderate position in terms of wealth and sex, but she didn't bother fighting for men. She was concerned about Wu Yunyang's position and the issue of heirs. Perhaps she thought she was the most sophisticated and resourceful, but she found that Wu Yunyang was far from being easy to deal with as she imagined. She wanted to make a profit as a peacemaker, but Wu Yunyang told her that she was not yet full of filial piety and never again. Don't mention it. Choked back to the corner. This big sister who can win back the city by burning incense on a moonlit night is not simple at all. Fortunately, she also discovered Pan Jinlian's strengths. She is not only vicious, impulsive, and sharp, but also shown in the Good Day reunion. His talents shocked her even more. Ever since, she has been very active and tried every means to use Pan Jinlian, not only to deal with Li Ping'er, but also to deal with Li Ping'er's second generation, Song Huilian Ryer, and even to deal with that political the master and the silent big sister. Obviously, because of this little war triggered by Li Ping'er, the final outcome has gradually lost its meaning. However, while Wu Yunyang was mute eating coptis and Meng Yulu was sitting alone on the Diaoyutai, something more interesting and meaningful happened. That is, everyone discovered Pan Jinlian, a good chess piece, and also discovered that Li Ping'er is not as difficult to deal with as imagined. So from then on the surface, Pan Jinlian and Li Ping'er were fighting fiercely. Secretly, the silent eldest sister and Sanyang, who complained that the eldest sister didn't care, were also competing for beauty. And they were all behind or conniving, or encouraged Pan Jinlian to deal with other women. But on the surface he becomes the embodiment of justice and morality, using politics to balance Pan Jinlian's outstanding offensive power. Version 3.0 of the battle for favor is just such a peculiar four-corner antagonism, which will overshadow the main battle for favor in the Ximen family in the next 40 chapters, and become the most interesting character relationship in the Golden Ping Mei.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.